productive, contributing to their families and social security, and out of the hospital. That is the focus. Again, we're not here to tell you what is wrong with you. That requires a conversation in a different setting that is private and confidential, plus or minus a fee. And so we'll now begin. And I'm going to ask Dr. Caroline Lawrence to open the batting. She told me she played cricket. Dr. Lawrence.
I would like to thank Honorable Liburd for inviting me to take part in this session this evening. And I'd have to say a very, very timely session. It's always the right time to talk about prevention. Always the right time. It's not always the right time once, of course, the horse has left the barn, but it's always the right time to talk about prevention. And near and dear to me would be the heart. And to underscore that still today, throughout the world, heart disease is still the #1 killer throughout the world. So we're talking about topping infections and topping HIV. Heart disease is still the #1 killer throughout the world. And the majority of the killers in heart disease can be prevented. And again, prevention is always something you're ready to talk about at any time. So when we talk about the heart, of course, we're all familiar with the heart. That's the organ that's in the chest. Most people's heart is on their left side. Some on the right, yes, but most people's heart is on the left side. And the heart is responsible for directing blood throughout our body. Direct blood to the lungs to get oxygen, and then that oxygenated blood throughout the body to deliver oxygen and nutrients all over the body. So clearly, if this heart is not working well, it can't do its job properly. And therefore, we're talking about a fall in blood supply to areas of the heart, of the body, and the heart itself, if the heart isn't working well. The #1 killer in the category of heart disease is this thing called ischemic heart disease, where the heart itself doesn't get all the blood it needs. The makeup of the heart, we have the 4 chambers in the heart, and then we have the arteries on the outside of the heart. So if you can see me having my fist here, and then the heart arteries that feed the heart itself runs on the outside. These arteries are very important to deliver oxygen and nutrients to the heart tissue itself. What can make these arteries not work well is if there is buildup of cholesterol and plaque, and which can obstruct how the blood flows to the heart itself. So we're talking about, I like to give the analogy of the vessels feeding the heart, similar to the pipe draining the sink. So if you have your nice wide open pipe, no gunk built up in there, you pull the plug, drain empties, water flows out. Over time, if you're keeping that drain pipe clean, stuff will build up here, gunk, lots of gunk, and so therefore it doesn't empty. The drain doesn't, when you unplug the sink, the water doesn't flow out smoothly, and it takes a longer time for that sink to drain. So too, if those arteries that feed the heart are not there nice wide open, no obstruction to blood flow, then you will have a harder time for the blood to go through those same arteries to feed the heart itself. And so it's about then what can we do to prevent those arteries from getting obstructed? What can we do to keep those vessels nice, wide and open? So blood flow to the heart, a breeze. Blood flow to the brain, a breeze. Blood flow to the kidneys, to your limbs, to your gut. Blood just flows nicely. And this is where those preventable things can come into play. Yes, we have some risk factors that you can't modify, that you can't change. that put you at risk for getting this buildup of the cholesterol, plaque, and so in those arteries. So obviously we can't target those. Those would be things like having the family history of that same heart disease, being a certain races, black and the Hispanics, we are more likely to get this type of heart disease than other races. But the other races get it too, but I'm talking that's a risk factor. Being a man that's getting older, so a male gender, and just not dying, continuing to live. So those are some non-modifiable things we can't change. So then, if you recognize, hey, I'm a black man getting older, and my father or my grandfather, my mother had a heart attack, hey, I need to be thinking about what can I do to those modifiable risk factors to keep me from getting that heart attack that my father had. The heart attack is when that artery gets completely blocked. The artery that feeds the heart, it gets completely blocked. Absence of blood flow. No blood flow equal tissue die, equal heart attack. So what can I do? Recognizing these are the risk factors that I have, that I can't change, what can I do? And therefore we're talking about those modifiable risk factors, again, trying to prevent this disease. The modifiable risk factors would include having uncontrolled high blood pressure, uncontrolled diabetes, uncontrolled blood sugar, having a high cholesterol, being a cigarette smoker, being overweight and obese, not exercising therefore. Those are the common modifiable ones. So if anybody is a patient of mine, they would know one of the things I ask every single time you come to me is, how's the exercise going? Because that makes such a big difference to your prevention strategy. What exercise do you do? Do you have diabetes? What's your blood sugar? Do you have blood hypertension? What's your blood pressure? Have you done a cholesterol recently? And these things are totally available to every single one of us here in the Federation. To do these tests, to do these checks, they do them throughout the clinics, both islands. So we're not talking about having to board a plane to go anywhere to get these evaluations done. They can be done here. And therefore, prevention. So obviously, if your pressure is too high, bring it down. And that's usually medication. Again, exercise. I really can't underscore exercise. If your blood sugar is too high, bring it down. If the cholesterol is too high, bring it down. Start to exercise. Prevention is so critical. I get very upset when I see the heart disease that was preventable. In particular, hypertension, high blood pressure can cause significant and irreversible damage to the heart. And it just galls me when I see it, because I know I'm looking at something that could have been avoided. So being that heart disease is the leading cause of death worldwide, and the majority of types of heart disease we can prevent by being that aggressive about controlling the risk factors, we can see a major improvement in the outcomes throughout the Federation when we do our best bit with exercising, controlling the risk factors that we can control.
All beautiful people inside here. The average age looks to be about 33 3/4. So Dr. Lawrence told you something which I know a lot of you knew, that the heart is a pump and connected to it are some pipes. In other words, a cardiologist is a plumber. And when our pipes at home...
I'll allow that to be.
And when our pipes at home get clogged, we plunge it or we throw some Drano. The question is there a Drano medication? She mentioned risk factors. I just want to make sure you understand that term. A risk factor is something that increases your chance of a bad outcome. And the worst outcome is death. In between there, you have disability and illness. Point is, when too many young people, meaning people of working age, 18 to 55, 60, When too many people are disabled, they do not contribute to social security. And that's a bad thing for the viability of social security, because we all are looking forward to a little change when we get to 60-something. And not too many people at the head table are quite there yet, so that's a good thing. One other fact, life expectancy in St. Kitts-Nevis is 76 years, 70 plus 6. So we are in bonus of our biblical allotment. Men live to 73-ish, women 79. Highest life expectancy in the world, Scandinavia and Japan, 84. Anguilla, BVI, 80. Cuba, 80. United States, 79. The countries with the lower life expectancies are a lot of countries in Africa. And on that note, I will now hand the microphone over to Dr. Terence Drew. On your program, he is listed to present for 10 minutes on cancer and related issues. And now we're looking forward to see how Dr. Drew relates to the opening batsman, Dr. Lawrence. Dr. Drew.
I want to congratulate the of Constituency number 2 and the Honorable Master Liburd. I messaged her today and asked her how she was able to put this panel together. I guess it speaks of her leadership. And
she wrote a check.
Oh, she wrote a, oh, okay. And so tonight, following Dr. Lawrence, and I'm tasked with speaking about cancer. I know very recently the issue of cancer has become a very important issue for us here in St. Kitts-Nevis. I'm sure throughout the Caribbean, throughout the world. And much of what Dr. Lawrence spoke about in terms of prevention can also be used to prevent cancers. But by way of definition, and I'll give you a definition from the CDC, and cancer is a term used for diseases in which abnormal cells divide without control and can invade other tissues. Cancer cells can spread to other parts of the body through the blood and lymph systems. Cancer is not just one disease, but many diseases. And CDC says there are more than 100 kinds of cancer. And so, to make it as simple as possible, our body is made up of cells. Cells are the building blocks of the body, as you use blocks to build a building. And these cells, of course, can grow. And they can grow uncontrollably, which means they're not controlled by the many factors to keep them as they should be. And when they start to do that, that is when we end up in trouble. Interestingly enough, the body on a regular basis, every second, can make abnormal cells. But your immune system, to a great extent, your immune system is a system that fights infections. It also fights cancer cells. And it's a thought that cancer developed partly because there could be something wrong with your own immune system. So good immune system can help to prevent cancer. And so I want to touch on a few of the most common ones that we have here in St. Kitts-Nevis. For men, it is the prostate cancer. And I know sometimes we hear it and we hear it, but I usually tell people that there's something that is well known in science. That's almost always the simple answer is the correct answer. The things that Dr. Lawrence just pointed out to you to prevent heart disease, They are so simple. I usually say to patients, you don't need a track, you don't need any special shoes. All you need is for you to have the time and be willing to walk. In every community, I think there is a playing field that you can just walk around. You can walk on the bypass, walk on the side road. You can walk alone with friends. We are blessed with this beautiful climate. Right now, you know, in the United States, there are blizzards and all sorts of things, and people cannot walk outside as they would wish to. And so we have to take advantage of this. And so with the prostate cancer, it's a cancer that affects only men, because only men have prostate, right? I think so. And so people ask, why do men develop prostate cancer? One, because you have it. Secondly, because of age. As you age, the chances of developing prostate cancer increases. And three, because black men tend to have a higher risk of developing prostate cancer. I know there are many myths out there about, sexual activity and so forth. These really have not been shown to really cause prostate cancer. But we know lifestyle such as smoking, so forth, can help to lead to prostate cancer. If a man lives long enough, he will develop prostate cancer. But the question becomes whether the prostate cancer would kill him or not. And in many cases, men live with prostate cancer, and it's not the prostate cancer that take them out. It is what? Heart disease that take out many of them, and not the cancer itself. And so, what I would encourage men to do is that if you have a strong family history of prostate cancer, or you are 40 and above as a black man or non-white man, you really should be visiting your doctor and having a conversation about prostate cancer. I know the method to help to detect early prostate cancer a lot of men don't like. And this is what I said to them. Look at this finger, it's very small. But if you develop prostate cancer, you have to go through all kind of procedures. If you didn't catch it early, you have probes maybe sometimes as big as this. So choose one. And I'm hopeful that they are sensible enough to choose the smarter way. And so I hope that would encourage them. The other tactic that I use is that if they have a wife or a family member who is close to them, especially of the female gender, I encourage that female gender to pressure them. Let me give you a story. I remember a gentleman came to my office and he said, Dr. Joe, I can't go home unless I get the prostate cancer test done. I have to sleep outside. I said, man, you have a good wife. And the wife was serious. And so when I finished, he said, Dr. Joe, you have to call her and tell her that I got it done. And so I called her and told her he had it done and he was able to be admitted to his home. And so we have to use different tactics, of course, to get people to take care of their health. And so it is simply a blood test and a finger test that we call it, a rectal exam, where the small index finger, well, it depends on who, is introduced into the rectum. I'm sure Dr. Lawrence has a much smaller finger than I am. So if you're afraid of me, you can visit her. And you can have it done. And it is important that, of course, you make that step. The other cancer I would like to touch on is breast cancer. And I think that an amazing job internationally has been done with respect to breast cancer, because mammograms have really decreased the mortality of breast cancer. And people have been allowed to live long and fruitful lives because of this screening procedure. I have women who come, and when I speak to them, because I have a system where I look at all what you're supposed to do at a particular age, and I begin to ask you. And I would ask women if they would have had their mammogram done. And some of them would say, Dr. Joe, that is too hard. And I ask a next question. Well, if that is too hard, imagine taking off your breast. Because sometimes it's actually a choice between getting the mammogram done and getting your breast removed. And so sometimes I try to put it in those type of examples so that people can take it really seriously. And so in St. Kitts-Nevis, about 40. There's a lot of discussion whether they should start at 40, 45, or 50. Because, you know, the U.S. Task Force for Preventative Medicine and the Cancer Society and so forth, they had one big discussion about when it should start. But we know in St. Kitts, based on what we see, with these cancers, it is good that we really do it when we are supposed to. And generally, we start about 40, 45 here in St. Kitts-Nevis. With respect to the colon cancer, the way you prevent that cancer of the bowel, is that you can have a colonoscopy done where a camera pass up in the rectum or the bum area and look into your colon to see if there is any signs of cancer. Apart from that, you can do what you call stool testing for blood, which is a simple test. You carry some stool to the lab and they test to see if there is blood. If there is no blood, it's fine. And if there is blood, then you need to get a colonoscopy done. So this you should also do. The cervical cancer, which is the cancer of the cervix. No woman in St. Kitts-Nevis is supposed to die from cervical cancer. None. Why? Because, as Dr. Lawrence mentioned, you can go to the clinic and get your blood pressure checked. Cervical cancer screening is universal, accessible, and free in St. Kitts-Nevis. So I encourage you women to take advantage of it. Normally you start at about age 21, and trust me, it can save lives. And so with these simple measures, added to what Dr. Lawrence said, can also help in preventing these cancers and saving your lives. Thank you.
You don't have to be a shapely blonde in a gym wearing $1,000 sneakers. Just move on the sand. You don't need sneakers on the sand unless you came off a cruise ship. The cervical cancer progress will continue in this country when we introduce the human papilloma virus vaccination, which I understand sooner rather than later. Again, Dr. Drew reiterated that all of the screening tests are available in St. Kitts and Nevis, if not close by. Did you know there are about 5 or 6 breast cancer support groups in this country? Let me see if I have them. Pink Lily, Essence of Hope, Reach for Recovery, A Time for Us, and the Breast Cancer Foundation. That's 5. If you know of any more, write it on a piece of paper with your name, and I have a prize for you. One more point. Prostate cancer. It is claimed, and Dr. Drew will expand on this during the interactive, that a compound called lycopene is excellent for maintaining prostate health. And where do you find this lycopene? Watermelon, tomato, guava. Now, which plane do you have to take for those fruits? Which brings me to the third panelist, Dr. Cuthbert Sebastian Jr., recent graduate. He will discuss careers and tie in some of the careers to some of the preventive stuff you've heard already this evening. And for those who have just joined via radio, you are listening to A Conversation for Health here at the Old Girls School, sponsored by Central Barstow Labour Party branch, Marcella Liburd, parliamentary representative. So thanks to Freedom FM for bringing this activity live. So, Cuthbert, you ready? Okay. Give him a round of applause because this is first time.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I was asked to discuss the challenges of medical school and my agenda on health since graduating. So, I like to divide these challenges as internal challenges and external challenges. So these challenges started long before medical school. So I asked this question to myself: do I really want to be a doctor? And I feel everyone should ask themselves this question if they plan to pursue medicine. Reason is, I had some friends and colleagues that were in medical school with me, but they weren't sure if they wanted to pursue medicine. So what happened is they either failed, dropped out, or they struggled, and they were unhappy. So I suggest everyone who wants to do medicine should ask themselves that question. So growing up, I was always surrounded by doctors. My dad was a doctor, my brothers are doctors, my dad's colleagues are doctors. I was just surrounded by doctors, but I wasn't old enough to appreciate it. So I never had that eureka moment where I knew I wanted to do medicine just as yet. It wasn't until it was Christmas season where my brother came down and my aunt got this huge gash on her leg. And all of a sudden, my brother just rushed to her aid, patched her up, and I was like, wow. I want to be able to use my mind, my hands, my skills to be able to impact a person just like that. So that was my eureka moment. That was the moment I was like, okay, I want to do medicine. How do you find your eureka moment? Well, I suggest volunteering, working in medical facilities, shadowing doctors, so you actually know what it actually takes to live in this type of lifestyle, because it's a very demanding field. Long hours, sleepless nights. So that was my internal challenge. So what about external challenges? How do I get into medical school? That was another challenge I had to deal with. So medical school has become a lot more competitive over the years. There are more applicants every year, and academics alone just doesn't cut it anymore. Straight A's alone just doesn't cut it. And there are some individuals with masters, a PhD, and they still can't get in. So what are they looking for? They're looking for well-rounded individuals, individuals who participate in things completely different from medicine. So myself, I used to play basketball. I'm not saying I was good, but I used to play basketball. You know, that was something. I volunteered at homes for the elderly. I donated to poorer countries. For example, Haiti, when they had their earthquake, I was a part of an organization which sent food, water, clothes to Haiti. And just basically, you should do things that you love. I loved playing basketball. I loved donating, and I loved helping people. So it worked out for me. So you should take advantage of what you love in pursuit of getting into medical school. Another type of challenge you can face is financial, and that's a big one for everyone. Well, medical school is very expensive, and the fees go up every year. Every year. The fees went up every year from my first year to my final year. So there are options. I know that the Cuban government offers scholarships. You can go off. I know that UE subsidizes, well, the government here subsidizes the school fees for UE as well. I mean, there are loans you can take, and there are other scholarships from private organizations that you can possibly look into. But finance is a very big deal. So after finally making it into medical school, at first I thought, okay, now I'm in, it's easy. You know, it's an easy street. I just have to study, pass, bam, I'm a doctor. I was wrong. It's more reading and more information that I've ever seen in my life. Ever. The books don't even contain all the information. It's interacting with patients, being exposed to different diseases. And I also learned quickly that it's not just a science, but it's somewhat of an art. You know, you have to be compassionate, you have to show empathy. And that wasn't on the application form, so that was something that I learned on the fly. So that's one of the main problems I had in medical school. Another one is, it's a different language. How many of you have gone to a doctor and not knew anything what they were talking about? You had no idea what that word was. The first day of medical school, after my first class, it was anatomy. I called home. I was having a panic attack. I'm like, Mom, Dad, I'm hyperventilating. I can't understand anything they're saying. They laughed and responded, well, look, you're learning something. You know what hyperventilating is? But truth of the matter is, the only way to overcome that is to work hard. Whether it is me studying from morning to late at night, or getting together in groups, using all my resources. I'm not saying you should work continuously, but you should also take a break at times. But you need to understand what type of person you are when you're studying. Whether it takes you one time to read something to attain that information, whether it's twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, you need to know the type of person you are and then apply that as early as possible. So I finally graduated. So now, what do I do with my medical degree? So my agenda was always, from the beginning, before medical school, was to improve the health care in St. Kitts-Nevis. That's always been my goal. So I always was brainstorming, so I looked at some core problems in St. Kitts-Nevis: high blood pressure, diabetes, and obesity, and also affordable health care. These are some major problems in St. Kitts. So I decided, how can I do something that I really enjoy and I can tackle these issues? So currently, it changed at least 20 times, but I want to specialize in nephrology. That's kidneys, okay? It's kidneys. So, and all of these diseases that I've spoken about, obesity, high blood pressure, and diabetes, they all lead to kidney disease. I also want to point out that I just don't want to work and treat kidneys. I want to be a voice. I want to integrate education and health, because everyone knows the saying, knowledge is power. If people are informed, they can make better decisions with their health, especially from an early age, because I believe a massive change like this would require it to be generational. So preventative medicine is key. So I think education plays an important role in preventative medicine. Okay. So preventative medicine, diet, the importance of exercise, even if it's just 30 minutes every day, for most, 30 minutes every day would be great, of moderate exercise, just walking or jogging, whatever you can do. Stay away from smoking and any illegal drugs. And actually, safe sexual intercourse should be discussed as well. Not to exclude the adults, but I believe preventative medicine should be focused primarily on the youth today. And lastly, this is more of a private endeavor, but my sister and I, we've actually have had some discussions about forming a private foundation which will be supported by charity and donations, which is geared towards health to lessen the burden of St. Kitts-Nevis. So the goals of this foundation would be to purchase the essentials for the hospital to function at an acceptable capacity, allow opportunities to lessen the expenses patients have in the hospital, and finally, and what I think most importantly, if successful enough, assist in aspiring doctors, school fees, and specialization so they can one day return and contribute to St. Kitts. Because I believe you can buy all the equipment, get all the resources, but I think the bedrock of anything, whether it's business, tourism, education, or health, is people. And without the support of my fellow man, we would be destined for failure. Thank you.
I'm feeling sorry for Dr. Alexander. He has to follow that. All of us here on the panel could relate to medical school. You're thrown in at the deep end and you had to swim or you sank. So I trained in the United States at Howard University, where on average my colleagues finished medical school with about $75,000 US worth of debt. You heard from Cuthbert that a doctor is a teacher. Look it up. Look up the word physician. Doctor is a teacher. If your doctor is not a teacher, you have the wrong doctor. Try a nurse. He mentioned the Cuban government. I think I have to take the opportunity to recognize the government of Cuba and the people of Cuba for the unrivaled contribution to the development of healthcare in this country. And in case you don't know it, there are students from the United States attending medical school in Cuba. Go on YouTube and type in the documentary on ELAM, E-L-A-M, documentary on ELAM, and you get about 90 minutes of what's happening in Cuba. Dr. Sebastian Jr. said he wants to be a nephrologist and play basketball. We'll see how he gets that done. And speaking of basketball, I now bring Dr. Alexander, because he too tried his hand at basketball. Now, so we brought Alexander in what the baseball people call the clean-up position. Anything that wasn't mentioned, he's going to clean it up, right? Because he's a generalist. A general practitioner can solve 99% of medical problems. There's no doctor who can solve 100%. If you know one, write it on a piece of paper and send it to me. I'll call the name out. I'll call them out. Right. Now, encourage you to maintain a relationship with a good generalist. General practitioner, family medicine, same thing. General internist. That's Dr. Drew. Dr. Lawrence started out in general medicine and then further specialized in cardiology. And I'm a general pediatrician. The point is, very few people need to access medical care outside of the Federation and the OECS with the talent that we have. Dr. Alexander.
Good night. I'm wondering if it even makes sense to continue after the accumulative power of the four that went before me. Just this morning I was talking to somebody about what I like to think of as Rasta liberty. That's something that often growing up in Market Street, my mother used to beat me and tell me to keep away from the Rastas. But I think if lots of us took on that Rasta liberty, because I was born in the 70s and grew up in the 80s, when Rastas were frowned upon, and the whole lifestyle was frowned upon. But even at that point, and even way before that, they was telling us to keep away from the salt, eat a lot more plants, respect for self and love for self, positive is the way we live. And if lots of us had taken on that liberty from the 70s up to the 80s until now, we'd have much lower incidence of diabetes and hypertension, erectile dysfunctions, which are three of my topics tonight. I don't think I have the time to embark on a journey of all three, and I think my colleagues before me made some really great interventions. But I'm just going to give you anecdotal-wise some of the things I've seen since I've been back. I graduated in 2005, and Cuthbert said a lot of things that resonated with me. And sometimes we who studied in Cuba think our journey was pretty different, but he studied in U and it was pretty much the same. I don't know, because that's a question I get often, what inspired me to be a doctor after going through the norms of wanting to be a police or wanting to be a dump truck man. Because everybody, growing up in Market Street, you sat by and waited for the dump truck man to come, and those were respected duties those times. And another thing he said resonated with me. I went to med school where lots of brilliant persons were in class with me. And lots of those brilliant persons did exceptionally well at med school. And now are architects, artists, musicians. That truly wasn't their love because they were pressured by their parents, they were pressured by society. They thought medicine could bring them wealth and other things, but I often say, if you're truly not empathetic, if you truly don't care about persons, no matter how much money you make, you won't survive past 2 years in medicine. Because even to diagnose, you have to be empathetic. You have to be able to put yourself in those persons' shoes. So coming back for me was very difficult. One, because I studied in Cuba where there's socialist medicine, where it's for free, total access. And coming back home with that empathy and wanting to help so much, because then you realize that there's a contradiction. Because you come home and you think you're going to help, but you also got to think about the bottom line. You have to think about making that money. So hypertension, I think that's, anybody could Google, like I said, and find out what is hypertension, that once you get a reading of 140 over 90, then it says flag and there's a risk. But this education is out there, easily Googleable, easily talked about every day, but yet we're still seeing the lifestyle changes that are still causing the diabetes and hypertension to affect us in such a great way. Dr. Martin spoke earlier about it being unsustainable. I read once that one of the chief reasons for bankruptcy in the States is long-term illness or long-term hospitalization. I don't know if we've done the statistics in St. Kitts. It's definitely the case. It's heart-wrenching for me to see anybody with cardiovascular problems of cancer, and just simply cannot pay their way. Just simply cannot pay their way. Or simply have depleted all their funds. Because lots of us, we think we are wealthy. We live in wealthy homes and we drive wealthy cars. But our wealth, the source of our wealth is our income, because we get big wages. But the day that you can't go into work, money is being spent and no money is coming in. And I see that daily throughout St. Kitts. And we're lucky in that we have basically a social democracy going, that, as the doctors have said before you, everything, all of the basic and all of the preventative measures are accessible. In every village, basically in every village, distributed throughout St. Kitts, there's a clinic. And a doctor is there at least once per week. At least once per week. So we have to do more. Why our incidence of diabetes are so high is that our lifestyles, our diets, the way we move, we are less active because we have cell phones now, so we don't have to go to the neighbor to call them. We have video gaming systems that we could stay inside and entertain ourselves, access to the internet, we could entertain ourselves, so we don't need to walk, we don't need to move. And when we do think about moving and walking, we think about it in the most exclusive of ways. Because One of the things I've realized too is that food is a status symbol in St. Kitts. In that no longer can you make some local drink and send it with your child because that appears poor. If he doesn't have a Capri Sun box drink, it almost gives the impression that you can't afford. And you've decided that no, I have to be able to afford. So you see that transition, and I know there's a transition because like I said, I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, so I've been around for quite some decades. And I've seen an absolute shift in the way we live. In fact, I used to frequent the country every weekend when I was growing up. And you could see a difference between the countryman and the tongue man, as we say in St. Kitts. That line has been blurred. We all eat the same. We no longer care about where our food comes from, just as long as it's on the shelf and it looks pretty on the box. Nobody turns over on the box and read the labels. So we've lost sight of our food and the source of our food, and that again is a national issue. That's a national issue in that we have to think about food security. If there's a war, hurricane, and ships or planes can't come in, how are we going to eat? How are we going to sustain ourselves? So these are questions we all have to ask. I remember coming back and getting up on my, well, I can't say soapbox, on my Bryson box, and telling people prevention is the way, you have to eat more fruits and vegetables. But later on, as I understood, there's lots of socioeconomics that influence that. A poor mother of 4 working 2 jobs, if she buys the fruits and vegetables or the rice, she has to then think about how am I going to help them with the homework, balance time preparing that meal. So it's much easier to go out and get something fast food that's already prepared, and she knows for sure the kids will enjoy and their bellies will be filled. So it goes beyond just individual choice. That's a part of it. It goes beyond us preaching. It must start to influence the way we make our policies. If we're going to tax the Bryson, tax the sodas, tax the things that we know are risk factors for us, and invest that back into healthcare. And maybe as doctors we're not doing enough, maybe we're not lobbying. The young doctor spoke again. I'm supposedly the president of the Medical Association. Has he already signed on? Does he know about the Medical Association? Are we even doing enough? These are questions we should ask ourselves. So we know a lifestyle change in that you start to exercise. You start to eat fresher, homegrown foods that can impact both diabetes and hypertension. We've seen that. But these are things, as the young doctor said, that we have to start inculcating in our young early. It must form part of our education system. Why are we not having life skills? Why are we assuming that every woman or every man growing up must automatically learn to cook? Why isn't home ec a compulsory subject if all of us need to eat? So let me just make a plug for the erectile dysfunction before I leave. Like I said, there are lots of men in the crowd here. They've done the research. Kittitian men do not like doctors. It was interesting that Dr. Drew made the comment about the wife. I always tell my patients, I love when they come in couples. Because the women have been trained very early to get involved with their bodies. Don't be afraid of your bodies. Go and check your bodies. But our men somehow feel that I don't want to know. I prefer not to know. When it happen, it happen. But it's always for you to do that for your individual self. But you're a father of 4. You're a supporter of a household. So you have to think beyond you. Yes, my time is up. Oh. Okay. So, like I said before, very simple. I don't want to get too scientific and too far-fetched and too way out. All of us know what Rasta liberty is and how the Rastas live. Move closer to that. I'm not telling you go lots. I'm not telling you to smoke marijuana. I'm telling you move closer to that. Less salt. Take out the meat. More exercise. But more than that, positive is the way we live. Because stress is another main factor in our society, and we as a people seem to love stress and move towards stress with ideas and actions. But if you just live by that one tenant, positive is the way we live, that in itself will start to influence your life and lifestyle.
I worked on the pediatric ward at JNF Hospital from 1990 to 2004 and saw one Rasta child. One. And that had to do with live clean, let your works be seen, and eat fresh. All right? As you know, the Honorable Marcella Liburd served as Minister of Health. And I was Chief Medical Officer, and we had as Permanent Secretary the late Elvis Newton. That combination made for some lively discussions in the Ministry of Health. But the question of costs, what people have to pay, really started occupying us. Does money buy better health care? Well, the United States spends 18% of GDP, 18% of its economy on health care. Yet, and we spend 6% of GDP. 18 versus 6. Yet, the chance of survival of a child here in St. Kitts-Nevis is better than that of a black child in the United States. Looking at the infant mortality rates. Black children. Oh, I just got a tweet. Again, to write, yes, to thank Freedom FM again for its coverage, and also to thank Island Purified Water for supplying the panelists with some lovely refreshments. Thank you. Thank you to Island Purified Water and Freedom FM again. If you turn on your televisions this evening, you will notice a new phenomenon, relatively new. It's called direct-to-consumer advertising. Almost every hour, we are bombarded by about 6 to 10 commercials for a pill. Things that make things go down and things that make things go up. Check it out. Something is happening in the world of big pharma, whereby they're telling consumers, go and tell your doctor you feel you have this and you want that pill. Manipulation. The manipulation has been taking place since the advent of cable television into our market in the 1980s. This is not blaming anybody, this is a fact. When a country's income per capita reaches a certain place, there is an invasion of people doing business. Now, I personally don't blame people for doing business, but those of us who have a little understanding should explain to you some of the tactics. One of the tactics deliberately marketed to our children is supersize me. To get children and some unsuspecting adults to drink more soda, the soda bottles increased in size. From 8 ounce, well, it used to be Bryson. It used to be glass bottle, right? Now it's plastic. From 8 ounce now to 12 and 16 ounces. Right? Now, in 1 8-ounce can of soda, there are 9 teaspoons of white sugar. When the body has enough sugar and you put more in, the body converts it to fat. Some of the most recent research, and there was a conference at the University of the University of Technology in Jamaica just last week. Some of the most recent research is saying that is the sugar-sweetened beverages that are the leading causes of obesity, because they are chock-a-block full of sugar. Swank. One more point about costs. A friend of mine told me that a good health insurance, good medical insurance in this country for a family is about $150 to $200 per month. EC, with air ambulance. $150 to $200 per month. So I asked myself, how much do I pay for top-up per week? Or a weave? Or acrylic nails? Don't go there. Or for a round of drinks? The point I'm trying to make here is that, yes, governments would like to make sure everybody is covered, but governments can't be all things to all people. The government health insurance will give you something, but if you want more, you have to go to the private market. $150 to $200 per month. Is that a worthwhile investment or not? All of us in here know friends and families who found it to be a worthwhile investment.